Guys, take a quick look at this picture. Diaz is cutting inside onto his right foot, setting himself up for a cross. But here's the problem. There are 3 Newcastle defenders packed inside the box, and the only player we have making a run into a dangerous area is Mo Salah. Even if he gets there, let's be real. Mo isn't exactly an aerial powerhouse who's going to outjump the likes of Burn and Shaw to win a header. So why are we bringing all this up? Because this moment perfectly highlights how poor our box occupation is. And that's exactly why a new number 9 might be a priority in the upcoming transfer window. Diogo Jota, as talented as he is, has always struggled with fitness issues. And truth be told, he's more effective when playing as a false 9. Then there's Darwin Núñez. Despite all the potential he has, he's never really found a consistent level of performances. And if Arne Slot can't unlock that side of his game, you have to wonder who can. This is where the number 9 discussion gets interesting, and one name that's been heavily linked with the club in recent weeks is Alexander Isak. The 25-year-old has already bagged 19 Premier League goals this season, and at first glance, he seems like an ideal fit for Arne Slot's Liverpool. But while his skill set is exciting, a closer look might reveal 1 or 2 reasons why the board could explore other options. So, should the Reds make Alexander Isak a top priority this summer? Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's dive straight in. First things first, let's get the obvious out of the way. Alexander Isak is, without a doubt, one of the most clinical finishers in the Premier League, if not the world. This season alone, he's scored 19 goals from an XG of 15.6. Now, some might argue that consistently overperforming XG is a red flag. It could indicate a lucky streak or just a run of hot form. But in Isak's case, efficiency in front of goal has been a pattern, not a fluke. Over the last 6 seasons, whether at Newcastle or Real Sociedad, he has consistently outperformed his XG, with only one exception, the 2021-22 campaign, where he managed just 6 goals from an XG of 9.8. 7 of Isak's 19 goals this season have come from inside the 6-yard box. That makes him a tap-in merchant, right? Well, if that's the case, we could really use one, because guess what? Diogo Jota has only scored 14 goals from that area, and Darwin Núñez has just 5. And no, we're not talking about this season alone, we're talking about their entire Premier League careers. Now, to be fair, Jota has only recently started playing more centrally, but still, these numbers highlight a key advantage Isak has over our current strikers: his movement, positioning, and overall dominance inside the box. So what makes Isak so deadly in front of goal? Well, the obvious factor is his physical presence. The guy stands at 6 feet 4 inches, which makes him as tall, if not taller, than most centre-backs, let alone players in other positions. Now, at first glance, he might look a bit lanky, like someone who could be easily bullied off the ball, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Isak has what we like to call evasive strength. He's not just about raw power, but he knows how to use his long limbs to shield the ball, push off defenders, and position himself perfectly for crosses. You might be wondering, how exactly does a striker use his limbs, especially his hands, to create goal-scoring opportunities? Well, let's break it down with an example. Here, you can see the play developing with Isak making a run into the box as Gordon drives forward. What happens next is pretty predictable. Hall is making an overlapping run, and Gordon's about to play him in. The problem? A Leicester defender is sticking to Isak like glue, staying tight and not giving him an inch of space. So what does Isak do? He pushes him. Yes, you heard that right. It's not a blatant shove that would get called for a foul, but it's just strong enough to create separation. That slight nudge does 2 things. It throws the defender off balance and gives Isak just enough space to move freely. And that small detail makes all the difference. By the time the cross comes in, Isak is completely unmarked, perfectly positioned, and ready to bury the header. Another key attribute that sets Isak apart is his football IQ and clever movement inside the box. Sure, pace and power are great, but they don't mean much if a striker can't time his runs and stay onside. To truly appreciate Isak's intelligence, let's break down another example that perfectly showcases his awareness and positioning. Here, you can see Isak making a run into the area. At first glance, it looks like he's almost guaranteed to be caught offside, as he's either level with or slightly ahead of Chelsea's defensive line. At first, his movement seems fairly simple. Instead of sprinting straight forward, he slows down, he just slows down, positioning himself more effectively. But here's the problem, his teammate hasn't released the ball yet. If Isak moves forward too soon, he'll end up offside again. This is where his real intelligence kicks in. As he anticipates the pass being played to Hall, instead of rushing forward, he drifts slightly to his right. This subtle movement keeps him onside, stays in line with Chelsea's last defender, and just as importantly, creates separation from his markers. The end result? An easy tap-in. Smart, simple, and incredibly effective. This is the first major area where Isak would massively improve our squad if he joins next summer. His clever movement, speed, and physicality would take our box occupation to an entirely new level. In fact, Isak is one of the very few strikers we've seen consistently trouble top-tier defenders like Van Dijk, Gabriel, and Saliba every time he's faced them. His presence high up the pitch forces opposition defensive lines to drop deeper, creating more space for our midfielders to operate. And even if teams decide to push up against us, we'd have the option to use him as a target man, adding another dimension to our attack. Not only would he enhance our play in the final third, but he'd also help with progression from deep when we opt to go long. And of course, his ability to finish with both feet and his head would make our firepower even deadlier. But here's the best part. His goals aren't just limited to inside the box. Isak has an elite ball striking technique, and we're not just throwing that term around. Just think back to that absolute rocket he scored against us in the league. Or that near-perfect strike against Arsenal in the League Cup semi-final that rattled the post. Sure, taking shots from outside the box isn't always ideal since they come with a lower chance of scoring, but when a player has elite ball-striking technique, it becomes a real weapon. It catches goalkeepers off guard and allows Isak to finish chances in ways that defenders simply don't expect. Now let's say you've never watched Isak play. Based on everything we've discussed so far, you might assume he's just a typical number 9. Strong, dominant in the box, a clinical finisher, but maybe not the best with the ball at his feet. Well, this is where Isak breaks the mold. He's not just a physical presence, he's also incredibly silky on the ball. The 25-year-old has the dribbling ability to escape tight spaces, combined with the agility to change direction quickly when driving forward at pace. In other words, he's not just a goal scorer, he's a complete forward. That magical assist he provided against Everton last season is the perfect example of this. The way he glided past defenders near the touchline, almost like he was invisible, before cutting inside the box to set up the goal. It was pure class. And speaking of assists, Isak's creativity is just as impressive as his finishing. He ranks third among all strikers in the Premier League for expected assists, shot assists, and key passes. Isak's combination of physicality and technical ability allows him to perform at a high level in multiple positions across the pitch. He's not just limited to playing as a traditional number 9. He can drift into wide areas, particularly on the left wing, and even drop deeper into midfield when needed. Now, he might not operate as deep as Arne Slot typically likes his number 9s to, but he definitely has the skill set to adapt to that role if required. His versatility only adds to his value, making him a striker who can offer so much more than just goals. Now, on paper, this all sounds like a match made in heaven, doesn't it? A striker who's the complete package. Movement, finishing, creativity, physicality. There really isn't a better name out there for us to target. But before we get carried away, let's take a step back and look at what might make this deal less favourable. First, let's talk about Isak himself. Despite all the positives, there's one area of his game that might not be at the required level. It's his defensive work rate. Aside from blocked shots and aerial duels won, Isak ranks relatively low in most defensive metrics, like tackles and duels won. That might not seem like a big deal for a striker, but when you consider Arne Slot's philosophy, where everyone is expected to defend as a unit, it raises some concerns, especially when you factor in that Salah already gets a free role to stay high and conserve energy. Adding another attacker who isn't fully engaged in pressing could affect our out of possession structure. Now, does this mean his defensive work rate can't be improved? Of course not. Isak has shown that he's capable of putting in the hard yards out of possession. The best example is relentless pressing against us in the EFL Cup final. He was constantly chasing down our defenders, proving he has the mentality to handle such high-intensity demands. But this brings us to the second major concern about Isak. If we're going to ask him to increase his defensive workload, that's going to put more physical strain on him. And when you look at his injury history, that's a serious red flag. Since joining Newcastle, Isak has missed 39 games due to various injuries, ranging from thigh and groin issues to a broken toe. These recurring injuries could be linked to his lanky build and the sheer physical demands of the Premier League. Taller, leaner players often put more stress on their muscles and joints, especially when making explosive movements like sprinting, cutting, and jumping. Isak's long limbs mean he covers ground quickly, but they also make him more susceptible to muscle strains and impact injuries, particularly in a league as intense and physically demanding as the Premier League. And when you factor in the third major red flag, which is his price tag, it begs the question, is this a risk worth taking? Newcastle have reportedly slapped a £160 million price tag on him. From their perspective, it makes sense since his contract runs until 2028. So they hold all the negotiating power, but if they're looking to make big moves in the summer, they'll need to generate some profit, especially with their uncertain financial situation. That being said, we don't see Isak being available for anything less than £90 million, and that's where the big dilemma comes in. Given the other key areas we need to strengthen next summer, does it really make sense to invest that much in one player with a history of injuries? So, there you have it. Alexander Isak to Liverpool is a move that comes with huge potential, but also a fair share of risks. On one hand, he's the complete package. A clinical finisher, physically dominant, intelligent with his movement, and even capable of creating for others. He would instantly improve our box occupation, give us a new target man option, and add a different dimension to our attack. But on the other hand, there are real concerns. His injury record is worrying, especially given the physical demands of the Premier League and the added workload he'd take on in Arne's slot system. And then there's the price tag, £90 million minimum, possibly much more. With other areas in the squad needing investment, is this really where we should be spending our money? So, what do you think? Should Liverpool go all in for Alexander Isak? Or is the risk too big given his price and injury history? Are there better options out there that would suit Arne's slot system? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future uploads. See you in the next one.